Hello guys, welcome back. My name is Nathan, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit special, predicting Team Canada's 2022 Olympic roster. Now, Doug Armstrong from the St. Louis Blues has officially been named GM for Team Canada's 2022 team, and that got me thinking towards what players we could potentially see being on Canada in 2022 if the NHL were to participate. But what do I see the official roster looking like? What are my official predictions? And who do I see being the top players on Team Canada in 2022. Watch till the end and make sure you watch till the end for all these predictions because I got some spicy ones. And hit that subscribe button if you're new. We got 65% of the people that are not subscribed watching these videos, so every bit helps, and we'd love to have you in the Grab Gang for more hockey videos just like this. Now let's start off today's prediction video with a little bit of honesty. Canada will have the best roster in 2022. We pretty much know that, but especially when it comes to the individual players that Canada picks, that is hugely important to how Canada will do in this upcoming tournament. When it comes to this year's tournament, this prediction, by the way, is just predictions. This isn't who I think should be on the roster. This is who I think will be on the Canada roster. And I went with a kind of mix of everything. Youth, veteranness, established players, pretty much all of it combines into one, I think. And I think for Canada, it's a fantastic blend. They have so many fantastic players to choose from. Some players that are all-stars that they are having to leave off the roster. It's going to be an absolutely stacked one, but I think there's going to be a lot of fantastic youth, a lot of fantastic players that have been in the Olympics before that will hopefully for Canada lead them to the promised land and lead them to the gold medal. Now, I want to start out today with the first line for Team Canada, and we'll work our way down for the forward lines, then the defense, and then the goaltending. Got it? All right, let's get into the first line for Team Canada and my official predictions for 2022, starting with the first line for the Canadiens. On the left wing, I have Connor McDavid. At center, Sidney Crosby of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and on the right wing, Nathan MacKinnon of the Colorado Avalanche. Now, this could easily be their top three centers in order of center, but I think what they'll go with is just a full line of all three of these guys, where the other team will basically have no chance of having the puck at all. And I think for Canada that will work out quite well. And again, there is only one puck, but I think Canada has enough depth and enough other superstars to where they can stack a line like that. First and foremost, I think Connor McDavid will likely be on the first line no matter what, whether he's on the wing or the center. But I think what they'll do is have Crosby as the first line center. He's been in the Olympics before, obviously, multiple times, and has done so much in the World Championships and the World Cup, and obviously in terms of centers, in terms of face-offs, and in terms of leadership, Sidney Crosby is definitely up there among the best of all time in the NHL. And I think as a first-line center for Canada, it just makes sense, even though he is more on the older side. And when it comes to Nathan MacKinnon, I think he's also one of the more likely players that is on this team center-wise to be a winger. I don't think he needs to be a center to be successful on a Canadian team for sure, and I think he, as a winger, especially on the right side, would fit pretty perfectly. Again, it would be hard to stop this line at any moment, and having this line out there for like 15 to 20 minutes a game would be detrimental to even the best of them like USA or Russia. But with that absolutely stacked first line, what does that bring to the second line, and what players will we see there? Well, I'll answer that right now. Going on to the second line for Team Canada, I mean, they still have some fantastic players to work with. On the left wing, they'll go with Boston Bruins left winger Brad Marchand. At center, they'll go with Tampa Bay Lightning stud Braden Point, and on the right wing, they'll go with Toronto Maple Leafs wing in Mitch Marner. This is, I think, a line that brings pretty much everything. You have more of the not mature, but leadership kind of older role in Brad Marchand, who still is at the top of his game offensively, arguably. You have Braden Point, who I think is one of the most underrated players in the league, and as a Tampa fan, it's been that way for a long time. He, I think, absolutely deserves to be in a top six role for Canada, and I think as a center is a much better option than a Steven Stamkos personally, a much better fit as a second line center. And on the right wing, you have Mitch Marner, who I think by the time this 2022 Olympics will roll around, will have a top six spot on this team. I really think Mitch Marner should have that. I mean, I don't really want to see him on like a fourth line or anything, because that doesn't really fit his mold, but as a second line power play type winger, I think he's pretty much perfect there and will get a boatload of points for Canada, which is exactly the role he should be in. But as we've seen with multiple Stanley Cup champions and multiple gold medal winners, the third and fourth line set the tone for big games and are super important as well to big time winning teams. Going on to the third line for Team Canada though, we're going to start out with just the great mix of everything. And with this third line, I wanted to go for a lot of pressure players, a lot of puck protection players, a lot of players that can really just grind play out and make it so hard for the other team to play against. That's the mantra that I think Canada is going to kind of mold with their bottom six. And starting out with the third line for Canada in 2022, Jonathan Huberdeau will highlight it on the third line left wing. Centering it will be Patrice Bergeron of the Boston Bruins, and on the right wing will be Vegas Golden Knights captain Mark Stone. I think this pretty much brings everything here. You have your great offensive player in Huberdeau, who is not a slouch defensively whatsoever. You have got your defensive stalwart in Bergeron, who's a great goal scorer. You got Mark Stone, who is a captain, is a fantastic pressure player, great on possession, great on forecheck, and is an amazing, one of the best, and I think the best defensive winger in the entire NHL. It pretty much brings everything I would want in the third line personally. And you got Jonathan Huberdeau, who on an NHL team on the third line would be an absolute travesty. He'll bring the offense as well and be a big part of that Canada team. So I think it's pretty much perfect for them, and as a complete blend, I think it brings everything you'd want. Now we're going to go on to the fourth line, and even though it's not as important as your third line, the fourth line can still set the tone, and we saw that with different teams like the Boston Bruins in 2011, the Chicago Blackhawks, how that depth really affects things, and Canada will have a lot to choose from. Going on to the fourth line for 2022, it's going to be absolutely nasty. On the left wing, they have Sean Couturier from the Philadelphia Flyers. At center, Ryan O'Reilly from the St. Louis Blues, and on the right wing, I have Mark Scheifele of the Winnipeg Jets. Now, the one outlier here I would say is Scheifele. I could see him getting as high as a second line spot, but it just depends how they value him, because he is an offensive center. He's not good on defense, but you kind of counteract that a little bit with the Selke Trophy winners of Ryan O'Reilly and Sean Couturier, to absolute defensive stalwarts. So I think in terms of kind of like the third line where you had Huberdeau as the offensive player, and then you had your two shutdown guys, I think that'll really kind of blend itself well if they do go that route. And I do think with Canada, we'll get into the defense in a minute, but in terms of overall defense and the defense on the defense, it's not fantastic. They got a lot of offensive D-man, but not a lot of guys that can truly shut it down, which I think is why you'll see guys like Ryan O'Reilly and Couturier paired up on the fourth line, guys like, obviously on the third line, Bergeron and Stone, who can really shut it down on the forward side of things and kind of create a more mixture on the defensive side of things too. So I think you have Scheifele on the fourth line, which is the offensive guy, and then you have your defensive stalwarts, which I think, especially for that bottom six, is what Canada is going to go with. But wait just a second, we are not done with the forwards yet. We have 3 extra forwards to predict for Team Canada's roster. 3 guys that they'll bring to the Olympics as extras that could potentially fill in case of injury. And we're going to go through these 3 guys. One of them is basically just because of leadership and because he's been there before. The 2 other guys are fantastic offensive players, or I would say one of them is truly offensive. The other guy is more on the defensive side of things, but also has been putting up fantastic point numbers, and I'm a big fan of him. And I think he will be a part of the 2022 roster in some capacity. I'm not going to spoil it any longer. Going on to the 3 extras, Matthew Barzal of the New York Islanders, Nick Suzuki of the Montreal Canadiens, and Jonathan Toews of the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, going through each of these 3, with Matthew Barzal, I think he could totally be, he could be in like a Scheifele or Marner role. It's just so tough to pinpoint where he would be, because I think he deserves to be on the 4 group. I think he deserves to be there, but it's just, I'm not completely sure where Canada fits him. That's the real problem for me right now. But with Nick Suzuki, I think he'll be a part of that team. Might get a couple of games and we'll see. But I think he's a player that by the time 2022 rolls around, Canada will give a major look to. He's already been so good last season. This season has improved in so many ways. Is just so good defensively, but also so opportunistic on offense as well, that I think as an extra forward for Canada, it would be pretty much perfect. And with Jonathan Toews, I mean, with that pick, this is purely predictions, because there's no way I'm putting Jonathan Toews, if I was the GM of Canada, on the roster, but I think it's just purely for leadership, purely for experience, and having that guy in the locker room, which I think for a team like Canada, who will have a lot of new guys this time around, is still pretty valuable. But now we are officially going to get into the defense for Team Canada, and this is where it gets really interesting, because there's a lot of guys offensively that can really bring it, but not a lot of great defensive options, which makes it harder to kind of put together a lineup. But I'm going to start out today with the first pairing for Canada, and going into the left D and right D, Shea Theodore of the Vegas Golden Knights and Cale Makar of the Colorado Avalanche. Now, both of these guys are leaning on the more offensive side of things, but I think Cale Makar will probably get more of the defensive defensive responsibilities here on this pairing. Meanwhile, for Shea Theodore, who's one of the best offensive D-men in the entire NHL when it comes to skating and when it comes to overall IQ, he's a guy that I think for Canada, they're definitely going to rely upon, especially on the power play and especially in terms of the offensive roles. For Cale Makar, he can pretty much do it all, though, especially this year where he's been fantastic, and it will be only his third year in the NHL by the time the Olympics roll around, but I think it just speaks to how good he is that he will get a big part on this Canada defense. Then going on to the second pairing, though, these are even more offensive, and I think this pairing will be used as the offensive pairing throughout the tournament. Going on to lefty and right D, Morgan Rielly of the Toronto Maple Leafs and Alex Pietrangelo of the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, I think Pietrangelo might get more defensive responsibility, I would say, but I think there's going to be a pairing that's just going to be lights out on offense, and that's what their role will be. I would like to see maybe a little bit more mix, we'll see, but I think both of these guys are excellent offensive D-man, and if Canada's wanting to score some goals, if they need one goal in like 5 minutes left in the game, I would send these two guys out. They're pretty good on the offensive side of things. Then going on to the third pairing, though, this is probably the best mix of offense and defense on this roster, I would say, and I would really like to see this pairing just in general in the Olympics in 2022. That being Dougie Hamilton for the Carolina Hurricanes and Jared Spurgeon of the Minnesota Wild. Now, starting with Spurgeon, there is so many roster predictions out there that don't have Jared Spurgeon on this team, and I really don't understand why. He is one of the best defensive options Team Canada really has to offer, and I think he absolutely should be on the team. He's a guy that, when you look at how much of an impact he has for the Minnesota Wild, they're one of the best defensive teams in the league, and it's been that way for years now, and Spurgeon has been one of the best reasons why. It's not because of Suter. He has declined hard in these last couple of years. It's been because of guys like Spurgeon, guys like Brodin, who are so good on defense, and he's the captain for the Minnesota Wild, a great leader, great community guy as well. I think for Canada is pretty much a perfect option as a third line guy or a third pairing guy that can just shut it down completely. On the left side of things, you have Dougie Hamilton, who's one of the best offensive D-men in the league, and I think these two guys would kind of supplement each other pretty much perfectly, and especially on a third pairing, having Dougie Hamilton and Jared Spurgeon, that's not too bad. But then going into the extras, I have three guys that I think will make Team Canada's roster, and I'll start out with the extra pair. I have Shea Weber and Aaron Ekblad, and for my extra defenseman, I have Drew Doughty. I'll say this, I think Drew Doughty is definitely overrated. I mean, he's a guy that's dropped off hard since about 2018, I would say, but Team Canada's going to put him on the roster. There's no doubt in my mind it'll happen, because of course. But now we can officially get into the goaltending, and this is probably the most interesting position for Canada, I would say, in their entire roster, because we know the forwards likely they're going to be there. We know the defense that's going to be there. But the goaltending is a pretty big question mark, and it's kind of been that way since Carey Price a little bit as well. There's one guy who I think could be the starter that's coming to my mind, but it hasn't exactly been a goaltending factory in Canada recently, which I think will kind of affect their Olympics overall performance. But we're going to get into the goaltender that will be the starter for Team Canada, and with the way he's played since the start of last season, I would say, I think this is a player that there was some doubt if he was actually going to be young enough to be the starter. There was some doubt if he was going to be good enough to be the starter a few years back. But over these past couple of years, he's proved that he has been back, and especially this season has been really solid. That being Carey Price of the Montreal Canadiens. I do see him being the starter, and I do see him being the guy. Even though on paper he might not be the best fit, possibly. Maybe Carter Hart has a better year next year or something. I think when it comes to Carey Price, he's had the experience with Canada in the World Cup and the Olympics. He's had all of this experience, and as an Olympics goaltender, he's been phenomenal. He will be the starter, I think, and will be the main guy. But we can now go into who the backup will be, and it's the worst kept secret in the world that Carter Hart will definitely have a major part of that goaltending tandem. Now, he might not be the starter. There is potential of that, but I think at the very least he will be the backup. Carter Hart is just an exceptional goaltender, though. Hasn't gotten off to the greatest start this year, but in terms of potential, he will be likely Canada's 2026 starter. Obviously, has a lot to learn from guys like Carey Price, but I think as an experience being the backup for Team Canada in the Olympics is nothing to scoff at, and I think he'll have some great experience to lead him on to his hopefully great NHL career and hopefully great Olympics career as well in 2026. Then going on to my backup goaltenders, I guess, after the backup, I got Mackenzie Blackwood and Marc-Andre Fleury. A lot of people also not having Mackenzie Blackwood on this team should absolutely wake up and see how good he is, because he's been phenomenal, and if he's able to stay healthy and have another solid year next year, I think he could maybe be the third goaltender. And you have Marc-Andre Fleury, who again has been there before, been the backup to Price, been the starter all these different times, and I think even though he's more on the older side, kind of like Jonathan Toews, will be there for the leadership and be there for the experience. But that'll be it for today, guys. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell if you've not already. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you support that way, and comment down below what do you agree and disagree with my picks and predictions. Who do you think will be the main guys for Canada, and what roster do you see them assembling in 2022? Make sure you let me know all your thoughts and share this video with your friends. Get it out there, boys. Everybody's appreciated, and click on this card for all of my predictions and picks videos right on one playlist. My name is Nathan. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video or stream. Goodbye.